Hello, True Health Seeker. Are you looking to become a holistic health coach? Would you love to work with clients and help them to transform their health and their life by helping them dial in their diet, their nutritional needs, their supplements, and their exercise program, and so much more? Health coaches have an amazing ability to help people achieve health and happiness in every area of their life. I just completed the program with the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. They have a year-long program where you can do the program in your own time. I'm very busy. I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I work full time, I do this podcast, and I was able to complete my year-long program with the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. So if you're super busy like me and you'd love to do a program that allows you to get into a new field, become a holistic health coach, become a certified health coach, then definitely check out the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. Now, I made a deal with them that any of my listeners who go to the Institute for Integrative Nutrition and enroll with them, that they will get the absolute best price, the best deal. Right now, they're offering $1,000 off their tuition. They often will also include some extras, some little bonus gifts for being referred by me. And so definitely check them out. Go to learntruehealth.com/coach. That's learntruehealth.com/coach. When you go to that link, you put in your name and email, and you'll be given a free module of their program. You can also give them a call, 844-315-8547. That's 844-315-8547, or Google Institute for Integrative Nutrition. Make sure you mention that I referred you, Ashley James, of the Learn True Health podcast, so that you get the absolute best deal. They also have an amazing payment plan, so if you're worried about how much it costs, it's totally affordable. And halfway through your program, you begin to take on clients. So by the time you've completed your program, you could have paid off your entire tuition. It's amazing. I love the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. I love health coaching. I can't believe how much I learned. You know, I would have taken their program just for the personal growth that I got out of it. It was like every week I got to learn from the top doctors and experts around the world. In fact, if you love my podcast and you love learning from these experts, it's like my podcast on crack. It's amazing. All the experts that you get to learn from through your online health coaching program. So if you're even remotely interested in becoming a health coach, or if you're already in the holistic health field, like you're a massage therapist or a nurse or a nutritionist, you will find that their program is comprehensive and deep and amazing at exploring all of the dietary theories and really understanding how you can help your clients to gain health and happiness in every area of their life. Visit learntruehealth.com/coach today and learn how you can become an integrative nutrition health coach. Welcome to the Learn True Health podcast. I'm your host, Ashley James. This is episode 216. We are in for such a treat today. We have with us an amazing author and life coach, Bryan Falchuk. He has such an incredible story and a very inspirational man. I'm very happy to have you here today.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, this has been great. You know, we had a nice little talk before we hit record, and I'm really excited for the listeners to learn more about you and your story. I love starting off the podcast with people's stories because it's how we can connect with you and follow your journey to see how did you become this amazing author and inspirational speaker, and also columnist for Inc. magazine. You've done just so much in your life, you know, and sometimes, especially around January, we kind of feel stuck. I think some people get kind of stuck in their life. You know, it's like, oh, it's another year. What did I do last year? What am I doing with my life?
Yeah.
You know, where am I going? And sometimes through self-reflection, sometimes people fall into a bit of a rut, or realize they've been living in a rut, or feel a little bit depressed because, wow, I'm already 37, or I'm already 45, or I'm already 55, and I haven't accomplished everything I set out to do. You know, so sometimes people kind of get down instead of the exact opposite, where we should be totally pumping ourselves up for the year and getting really excited and making some wonderful plans. sometimes we start getting down around this time of year. And so I think it's perfect for you to come on the show today because I think you've got some amazing strategies that you can teach all of us that we can apply to our life to get out of that rut, no matter where we are in our life, and just like get into the fast lane towards our goals. So I'm very excited to have you here. Yeah, let's start by talking about your story. What led you to become this amazing author and coach that you are?
Oh, well, I think that was a perfect setup, and I would just add on the time of year, like the weather is not to be dismissed either. It's dark more of the year, so
Mm.
it's cold and we're shut inside and it's dark and yeah, I mean it's like the perfect storm, and that is kind of where my background all comes together. Is like not to go back too far, but back when I was a really little kid, like 4 or 5 years old. I was the youngest of four, and my parents' marriage was coming apart, as is the case for a lot of marriages, what like half of them in the U.S. at least, and in divorce. And that was the situation that I was born into. I was actually, I don't think either of my parents would admit this, but if you just do the math on the timing, I was the marriage saver. And
Mm.
I've already said like that didn't work. So hey, I failed in my first role,
Oh.
but that's I'm not really upset about it. But that was the situation I grew up in. Is little kids have one basic need, and they're not even totally aware of it, but it's this need to feel taken care of, loved, and safe. And because you can't provide that for yourself as a little kid, you depend on others, so you need to feel that safety and security. And in a situation of divorce, that starts to be challenged. And, I was one of four, so my parents' time was already going to be split up quite a bit. It's not all about me. And then you add in the fact that, they're dealing with this divorce. There's, financial things that start to happen as divorce sets in, and there's a lot of fighting and arguing, and people are moving out. And I couldn't turn to my parents for that kind of support. And they weren't just naturally giving it to me because they were so embroiled in their stuff that I turned elsewhere for it. And at that age, I'm not talking about turning to drugs or alcohol or anything like that. I turned to food. And,
Mm.
it wasn't yelling, it wasn't moving out, it wasn't judging me, it wasn't anything. It was just there, and it felt good, and it was comforting. And, I was saying to someone the other day, I'm a morning person, and I think it developed when I was a really little kid because I would sneak down before everyone woke up, hit the pantry, and just grab, as many Oreos as my little hand could fit. And as soon as I finished those, I'd go back for more. And so, this wasn't a slowly but surely thing. It was really fast. And so you look at a picture of me from age 4, 4.5, and I was a smiley, skinny little kid. And you look at a picture of me from age 5.5 or 6, and you could start to see that it was like a different person. And then you look at a picture of me at 6, and it's like, this is an obese little child. And he's not so little. And so I grew up just gaining more and more weight because the reality is I wasn't gaining weight because I was eating too much and moving too little. Those things were as much a symptom as the weight gain itself. I was gaining weight because I was really unhappy, and what it really was is a mixture of depression and anxiety. That base need that children have, I wasn't getting that met, and so that developed into anxiety over essentially the idea that things were going to fall apart. And as my life progressed, there were lots of little things that I had to step in and solve because they weren't getting done. And so I had a lot of responsibilities thrust upon me as a child that, it's not the end of the world kind of stuff, but they're things that kids don't usually have to deal with or usually have to do for themselves. And there's a lot of positives that came from that. I'm very self-sufficient. I'm really reliable and dependable, and I'm kind of a problem solver. Like if things are going wrong, turn to me and I will get them solved. And that's awesome. And that's played out really well in my professional career. I spent a lot of time as a management consultant, and that's kind of what my job was. Like I got paid to step in and solve problems. But the flip side it meant that I was a pretty negatively focused person because I'd always be looking for what's wrong, and I'd be viewing things generally as how is this going to hit me? What is this going to turn into that I'm then going to have to step in and fix? And that can be helpful at work. It can be really hard in a relationship because you end up just being too critical, and you end up just sort of pushing people aside to do it yourself because if you don't, it's all going to go wrong. And that's kind of the background, the underlying of who I became as a person, starting with, what ultimately led me to be obese. And I wasn't obese forever. I lost weight in high school thanks to this really amazing man who ran the physical education program at my school, and he just took a different approach. Exercise to me was always really negative, really judgmental. It was, hey, fat kid, why can't you, run this fast? Or why are you wheezing? Or you can't do this, you can't do that, or I'll beat you. It was always a really negative experience. And for him, it was like, what do you like? Why don't we introduce you to things that you actually enjoy instead of making it all punishment? So we experimented with a lot of different kinds of exercise and try lifting weights and try this and try that and figure out how can we put together a program that you don't hate and that you're not ashamed to do because you struggle in it, or that people are judging you for. Like, team sports were tough when you're the fattest, slowest, worst performing kid out there by a huge margin. Running laps on the field or something, it's not just people are a bit ahead of me. They're like, we might actually be running in the same place at the same time because they're 2 laps ahead of me. And they've gone down and back already, and I'm still on my first cut. So, this was just totally different. And so it took out all the negativity around exercise and just allowed me to develop my own relationship with wellness, which was beautiful. And it was through that experience that I was able to lose weight. Now, the good news is I dropped weight. So I was about 100 pounds overweight, and I lost it, and I got really fit, which is excellent. However, and I don't blame him for this because it certainly was not his responsibility. And most importantly, I wasn't at a place where I was even in touch with those underlying issues I had talked about. I never dealt with the anxiety. I never dealt with the reasons why I was overweight. I had all these tools to lose weight, but the underlying cause of it was still there. And so I lost weight in high school, went to college, and that was a slowly but surely thing. As I got into my 20s and started working, that every year a few pounds would come back on. And I ended up, I lost about 100 pounds the first time. I ended up putting on about 45 of them again. But I never looked obese again. I just looked like everyone else. I always describe it, and people think this is funny, but I just say I just looked American. No one be like, oh, there's that fat guy. It was like, oh yeah, it's Bryan. He looks like everybody else. He likes watching football. Or so, like, I just looked like, the guy at the bar that you would hang out with. I never stood out again. And it's funny, as I look at pictures of myself from my late 20s, it's shocking to me how big I was. Because at the time, I certainly didn't feel that way. I look back and I'm like, how did my wife ever find herself attracted to me? Like, I looked terrible. I looked unwell. That's really what it was. It's not just that I was a little overweight. Like, looking at myself, I looked miserable. And I'm cheating because I know it wasn't just the weight. Like, I know now the emotional stuff that was going on there. And so the first, I've got 2 main pivots in my life. And the first was that backstory being obese. And I lost the weight, but some of it came on. Then there's this really crucial moment in 2011 where everything changed. And that's really what forced the path that led to, writing this book and everything else that I've achieved. This is a really tough time for me in my life. I was married. I had a 2-year-old son who's this amazing little kid. But my wife had a chronic illness that we weren't aware of, and it reared its head at this point. So it's the summer of 2011, and my wife got sick, and she'd had these really strange and intense bouts of stomach pain and fever and chills and just all kinds of issues. But after about 48 hours, they were gone, and no doctor could ever figure it out. And this is like going back to her childhood. She'd get them 2-3 times a year, maybe, and a day or two, they're gone. And so it was always like, oh, you caught a bug, or oh, you this, or you ate something, or you got food poisoning. But it was never clear what was going on, and they certainly couldn't stop it. And they thought it was her appendix, and ultimately she had her appendix out, but the attacks happened again, so it wasn't her appendix. And so she had one of her attacks in, I guess it was like late May of 2011. And it was on a Friday, so, I woke up, this is going on. So I stayed home from work that day. I'm like, that's too bad, but no big deal. By Monday, she'll be back on her feet, and it's the weekend, so I'll be home. So, That makes it easier to deal with, and I hope she's okay quickly. And Saturday came and she wasn't any better. I was like, all right, well, sometimes these things go 2 days. So, I'm sure by Sunday she'll be better. Sunday came and she wasn't just not better, she's actually worse. And that was different. She'd never seen that before. And Monday came and, I remember waking up and looking over at her and being like, she's definitely going to be well enough today. And she was worse. And so I called in sick Monday, and Tuesday she was worse. So I called in sick Tuesday, and I just said, I'm not going to be in this week. And we made a bunch of doctor's appointments and went in to see some specialists, and no one really knew what it was. And they just said, take some Pepto-Bismol and some painkillers, or just drink Gatorade and eat toast for a few days. You clearly, like, whatever bug you've been getting, you just got a bigger one. And the difference now was it wasn't just me and her. We also had a little kid at home. And so that made it a lot more complicated. But with every day, she just got worse. And so, a week goes by, and we were like, something's got to give here. So her mother came into town and allowed me to go back to work. So, someone could stay with my son and help my wife out. But with every day, she just got worse. And with every doctor's appointment, we'd have all this hope that they'd figure out what it was, and they just wouldn't. And it was actually worse than that, because it's not just that they weren't able to help her, they went to shaming her. So it became this story of, there doesn't actually seem to be anything wrong with you. Are you sure you're not just depressed?
Oh my
It's like,
gosh.
well, how would you feel if this was going on? Of course, but she was really not depressed before that. She was, she was a happy person. Like anyone who's around her was just like, she's amazing. She just had this energy about her. So it's not that this was like, this woman who's living in darkness. And it's like, are you sure you're not just, maybe, you seem really worked up about this. Are you sure you're not doing this to yourself?
Mm.
It's like, well, again, how would you feel? So of course she's worked up about it. Of course she's ridden with anxiety because she's getting worse every day. You're not helping her. And now she's this little child who depends on her. So, someone was like, I can't stand when doctors just keep trying everything and they don't get anywhere. I was like, I hear you, but I wish they were trying things. They weren't even willing to, even when they're like, are you sure you're not depressed? Well, how about, and here's someone you could talk to. They weren't even offering help with the depression they were blaming it on or the anxiety. They were just shaming her with it and walking away. And so with every passing day, and either, she's the same or worse, she starts to really lose weight very rapidly, like 2 pounds a day. And by the end of June, it had gotten so bad she was barely over 100 pounds. She couldn't get out of bed, maybe to go to the bathroom for a few minutes, but that's it. She's basically bedridden. She's not keeping any food down, the little food that she is eating. And I was at home at this point, so I'd worked something out with my boss that I was going to work from home for a while while we try to figure things out and try to get some help. And her primary care physician called me and he said, I'm going on vacation for 6 weeks. I just want to check in. Let's talk when I'm back.
Oh my gosh.
And I just said, doctor, she's losing 2 pounds a day. She can't even get out of bed. She will not be alive when you're back. And all he had to say was, okay, we'll take her to the emergency room if you need to. And then he hung up. And I was like, are you kidding me? That's all you have to say about this? Aren't you supposed to care? Shouldn't you be a little bit more concerned? Like, oh yeah, take her to the ER if you need to. And that's great. Go on vacation, have fun. Is there someone we could call, while you're out? Are you even going to tell us like who's your backup or anything? Like nothing. And that I got off the phone. I took that call outside of our bedroom because I didn't want her to hear, what he might have to say. And I'm glad she didn't. But I walked back into our room and her son was standing there and he was looking at his mom who was stuck in bed. And he turned around and looked at me and it's like, Daddy's home in the middle of the day. Daddy's not generally home in the middle of the day. He's usually at work. And it struck me as like, this little boy is watching his mother die and he's watching his father die just at a slower rate. Cause I put on a bunch of weight. I'm absolutely miserable. I was aware of the underlying issues from my childhood that I had never dealt with. Frankly, I was not the nicest person to have around because, all of my background stuff. And now I've got this huge problem that I can't seem to solve. and I'm the only one who earns money in this family. And how am I supposed to stay at home and take care of her and him and work and pay the bills and keep a roof over our head and keep us fed and pay for all these medical bills we have now? And it was, that feeling I said before about the world is closing in on me and how am I supposed to do all this? It's just amplified out of control. And and it struck me so clearly as I looked at my son. It's like, this poor little boy, he deserves better than this. Now, I will say my wife is still alive. Just want to ruin the story in a positive way. Like, I don't mean to spoil it, but I think that's an important thing to say. She's still here, and it's because in this moment everything changed. So I woke up July 1st, the next morning, with a completely different feeling about my life. And it was the first time I'd ever gotten a feeling of this. I woke up with a very true and clear sense of purpose and direction that I'd never had. When I lost weight the first time, I lost weight because I didn't want to be the fat kid anymore. I didn't want people judging me. So that's an external thing. For the first time, I felt an internal purpose. And a lot of it is focused on my son, and he's outside of me. But, for any parents out there, that feeling of your children is within you. But a lot of it really was about not just my son externally or being there for my wife, but I used this phrase the other day, and I think it really sums it up, is I wasn't living my life, and there was nothing in the chain of events that was playing out that would get me to a point where I was living my life. I was an employee of my life. And I can't think of anything that sounds any less appealing for how you go about your day, to be working in your life. And that meant I wasn't a great dad. I wasn't a great father. If my wife was going to make it, I wasn't the partner who was going to help her get there because I was so broken. And yeah, I was letting them down. I was letting myself down. And there's just too much on the line. And so I felt that difference. And I realized I had a choice. We all have moments of inspiration. We have moments where we feel driven by something. And sometimes we just notice them and then we go about whatever else we were doing, and maybe that feeling fades away. Or it's a lifeline and you can grab hold of it and you can never let go. And I saw this as one of those choices. And so I decided I'm going to grab a hold of this. And I knew there were really three key things right in front of me about me that were contributing to that sense of working in my life and not actually living as everyone's born with a clean slate. I was born with the ability to live a full life and be happy in it. And so far that hadn't happened. So here was my chance to get that back. So those three things were, one is my health. I was overweight again. I felt miserable. And I wanted that to end. I had back surgery the year before, and I never did PT, and like my back muscles were an issue, so I had chronic pain. Physically, like, I felt heavy and lethargic. It just physically, my body was not the place I wanted my soul to exist in. That was one thing. The other was, I was aware of the emotional stuff that I was carrying. Like, my mother ended up remarrying. Both my parents did, but my mother got divorced again. And it was through her second divorce, actually, that a lot of the stuff from the first divorce came out for me, because I was so young the first time around. I didn't know a lot of what was happening. And through the process of her second divorce, that's when I became aware of a lot of things my siblings got to process, because they were a little bit older than me. So I processed a lot of the divorce stuff as an adult, but I never actually stopped to process it. So I recognized there's a lot of stuff from my childhood that I've been carrying through the years that have defined who I am, and I need help with that. And I will give a ton of credit to my wife. She had been saying that since my mother's second divorce, which had been a few years already. And I just made every excuse in the book why I couldn't, because of, but I don't have time. I work. You don't understand. And now she got sick. So it's like, how can I leave the house and spend more money on medical bills to go talk to a therapist when, you need me, and any money we have needs to be going to care for you to turn this situation around. And she just put, her dire situation aside and said, if you don't work on this, you can't help me. And she's absolutely right. So that selflessness from her, that I have to say I fought really hard for a long time, because I couldn't see my way out of all the fixing that was hitting me in the face, to realize like you can't fix anything if you're that broken. You can't be there for anyone else ultimately if you're so not there for yourself that you just stop. So I did make the time for that with a lot of love and support from my wife, which is pretty amazing with what she was going through, that she was able to figure out how to make things work, to make the space for me to focus on myself a bit. And the last thing was my job situation. And, I said I had this flexibility to work from home, and that's great, but there's a lot of other things in my job that weren't great. And I had joined this company much earlier on in its life, and its founder was still running it, and he was gone at that point. And it's an amazing company, but it had turned into more of a big company. And politics had set in when they really were totally absent when I joined. So it was not the place I joined. And culturally, it was becoming less and less aligned with my values. I'm a very values-driven person. So I didn't feel good there on a regular basis, and I felt it getting worse. So I recognized I need to start taking some steps to prepare to leave. And obviously, it's a trickier situation. I can't just walk away because, I'm the only one earning money in the family, and I've got these medical bills, and we need to have health insurance and all that. So, that wasn't going to be just like a walk in and quit. I need to start networking. I need to work on my resume, like all these kinds of things to try to find the next opportunity that would be a better fit. So three really major aspects of my life, in addition to, helping my wife with her situation and trying to be there for my son and all that. There were three major things I needed to turn around. So I set some really specific goals for each of them that had specific deliverables. And I didn't just go like, okay, now I'm going to go work out. I did everything with really clear purpose around the kind of person I wanted to be for my wife, for my son, and ultimately for me, because I deserved it. And that was a really different feeling than I'd ever had. And that all is what culminated in the basis for what I do with my coaching work and the message that I teach in my book and my speaking and all that, appearances like this. It's around this notion of grabbing hold of what really matters to you beyond anything else and using the power of that to go after your true goals, and not little ones, not lose 5 pounds. I had 45 pounds to lose. It wasn't 100 anymore, but that's still a lot. I had to do some really specific things and work really hard to get there. Transforming your career, transforming your relationship dysfunction, or getting out of a dysfunctional relationship that's dangerous, and whatever it might be, big things that you need to overcome. And you can't, I think willpower is great for short term, but I'm talking about major life changes that I didn't want to lose weight only to do it again later as I had done the first time. I wasn't looking to lose weight. I was looking to be healthy. And that's a different thing. That's about getting to a level and staying there. And that's what I did. It's all these things are about enduring success, not just to tick something off and move on or redo it later because you fell back into bad patterns. So this is about transforming your life. And that takes really deep motivation, not gritting through a tough time for a little while.
Absolutely. I want to know more about the story. As you were, so that your wife was sick, that you didn't know what was going on. Your son was, you're seeing your son kind of go through this as well. Of course, 2-year-olds can't process the whole thing, and that's the problem. Is as children we can't process it,
Yeah.
so we tend to internalize it. And you're now, then you went and you sought counseling, finally, that because your wife had convinced you to go, so you finally went and began to pull back the layers and heal and work on your stuff. What happened after that? How did you go from there to becoming a coach?
Yeah. So the coaching thing really happened, I wouldn't say by accident, but not intentionally. So I'm someone who I love teaching people and helping people, and I've been really lucky to be a people manager for quite a while now. And the best part of that is always unlocking leadership in someone else, or taking someone who's not performing well and helping them turn their performance around and watching them thrive. So I've always enjoyed sort of like inspiring people to be better for themselves. So that, that underlying piece was there. but I didn't do any of these things for myself with the intention of becoming a coach. I didn't even think about it. But part of my journey in my weight loss was I realized I can't make this a hidden thing with no peer pressure. I need to be public about what I'm trying to achieve so that there's a bit of, like when you tell people you're going to do something, you're more likely to do it versus like just I would have these chats with myself or these like pep talks in the morning. I remember when I was in high school, when I was still obese, like today's the day you're not gonna eat like you've been eating. You're not gonna eat those cookies or that whatever. And like, half an hour would go by and I'd be off the wagon already. So I was like, I can't just make this an internal thing with me. So I put a number of tools in place that I think were really crucial. One is I was going to track everything that I did. So I just set up a really basic spreadsheet and I tracked my minutes of cardio and the distance I went and calories and how many sit-ups or push-ups or whatever, my whole routine. And I planned the routine out, but I was going to track it to make sure I could see that I was doing it every day. And then I was going to go public about that. So I was going to tell people I was 222 pounds. I wanted to get to 185 by the end of the year. So from July 1st to December 31st. So just shy of 40 pounds. And I thought maybe I might have some more to go, but I was generally told I should be about 180, 185 pounds. So I'm like, if I'm at 185 to 190, I'm not a young guy anymore. I wasn't too old, but it's not like 20. That's a pretty good goal. So let me get to 185. And so I put that out there. I went on Facebook and posted about it. And a couple of friends were like, hey, good for you, go get them, words of encouragement, which was really nice. So there's the social pressure of telling people you're going to do something, and that creates a sense of the need to follow through. But the flip side is you have a little cheerleading squad there. And I don't care who you are and how much you might deny it, it does feel good to have people being positive about what you're trying to achieve. Whether you outwardly admit that or not, or even inwardly, there's a piece of you that feels good having people tell you you can do it. Because there's moments where you're going to doubt it.
What about that little voice that comes up? Oh, but if I share that what my health goals are, what if I fail and then they'll all think I'm a loser or they'll all think I'm whatever. Like that little voice that says, well, like before you even start, and you're like, okay, I'm going to go tell everyone I'm on this new diet and I've got this, or I'm going to go run a marathon, or I'm going to lose this much weight. And then there's that little voice that goes, but if you tell them, then when you fail, you've got a bunch of people thinking you're a loser instead of just you thinking you're a loser.
Yeah, so I've got two things to say to that. One is that's kind of the point of the peer pressure. So one of the nice things about being a morning person, and I work out first thing in the morning, I'm usually not awake enough to argue with myself about it. So it's kind of like, don't question it. Hop on Facebook, like I don't care what your medium is, send an email to your friend, like whatever. Tell people in person. It doesn't have to be Facebook, but say something before you think twice. And that way, like, oh, it's too late. You have all your little doubts, it's too late. The other end, and this is actually a lot more serious and much more important, and this is probably 30% of the work I do with people when I coach them, it's not scientific, but somewhere around that is on self-love. And I know that can be a cheesy word to some people, but it is so unbelievably important and so unbelievably missing in most people's lives. And if you don't agree with me, answer this for yourself. When's the last time you had someone over for dinner or something? Did they compliment you on the food? And what did you do in response to the compliment?
Oh, it's
You
too
know,
bland. I think I
it's too
burnt
bland.
this. It's too
Yes.
mushy. I'll do that. My husband's trained me not to, but I have to bite my tongue because I'm serving him dinner. I love cooking. I love food. I love
Hmm.
cooking healthy food. I love making healthy food taste delicious. Like I just wowed him today. I made refried lentils. So, and I mean, they're not really fried, but I mean, they looked like refried beans, but it was lentils and it was like
I
last
love
night's
lentils.
lentils.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did this awesome like garlic tomato lentils last night, and then they taste 100 times better today because they've been like sitting there
Because it
marinating,
all set
right?
in. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I just basically sautéed them. And so they look like refried beans, which he loves. And I'm like, I salted a little bit and handed it to him. And I'm like, and I was like, oh, don't tell him I burnt it, because my instinct is to tell him like everything that went wrong. Like I think I burnt it. I didn't put enough seasoning. I'm like that's what I do is I'd hand him food and I'd start telling him all things that went wrong. And he's like, don't like he's like I'm suggestible. Like I'm just gonna start to taste all the mistakes. I'm not gonna just let me taste it and
Yeah.
judge it myself. And so half the time when I think I've screwed up dinner, he's like, "Oh, this is amazing. It tastes so good." I'm like, "Really? You don't taste like it's burnt and I like over seasoned it?" It's really funny how we do that. We totally put ourselves down. We're really
Yeah.
I had this licensed mental health counselor on the show early on, like back in like episode 20 or something like that. And he said, and I just this hit me so hard. He goes, if we could observe the a relationship we have with ourselves, we would call the cops on ourselves. I mean, we are so abusive. We are in the most abusive
Totally.
relationship. The most abusive relationship in your life is the one you have with yourself. And it's just amazing. You're so right that self love is really important, and we didn't really have many people didn't have role models of what healthy self love looks like, because
Yeah.
no one's perfect, but like you said, half of the marriages are ending in divorce, so half the children out there on average didn't really have like a healthy example of what self love looks like, because when two people are in the middle of a divorce, that's just you
It's
know
messy.
yeah, it's messy,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, so
It's messy and dirty.
how do we build that self-love so that we
Yeah.
can stop giving power to that voice that puts us down?
Yeah. So, as you're describing it, first of all, I'm like, I love lentils and I kind of like a charred flavor. So, um, but you know what you do when you don't have a self-love approach? You remove, you're not allowing for the possibility that you're good enough or that you're okay or
Mm,
that you even deserve the success. Like that's what it boils down to is you're not capable and you don't deserve it. You can't possibly achieve this. And even if you did, you don't deserve to have that success. You don't deserve to be fit. And like, who are you? You're a failure. You can't do that. And that might sound really harsh, but I guarantee you, in the recesses of your mind, someone is saying that. And you might blame someone else. It's like I said, when I wanted to lose weight, it's because the first time, I didn't want to be judged as the fat kid anymore. And one thing I know is people either were judging me as that, or I was judging myself as that on their behalf, like a ventriloquist. Like I would go somewhere and I would just, well, they must be looking at me that way. Like my wife said to me when I were first getting together and, um, I was telling her about, like I used to be a fat kid and she's like, oh, I would have loved you, which was so sweet. But I was like, no, you wouldn't have. It's just immediately like, of course you wouldn't have, or you wouldn't have the way I would have wanted you to. You might have been my friend, but you would not have been interested in me. And it's like, how do I know that? And I say it
mm,
right now, and I'm like, chances are, I don't know that at all. And you know what? I go around the country a lot. I'm in airports and I see all kinds of different couples, and there are plenty of people that like one of them looks kind of like me, and the other one doesn't look anything like I used to. Like it's possible, but I wouldn't allow for it to be possible. How could someone that I'm attracted to be interested in me? That's impossible. Well, yeah, now it is because I just said it is. So it's like just if the idea of self-love is too big, just how about the idea of allowing? Just like let it be. Allow for the possibility that you might actually be okay. We can figure out if you're not later, but for now, just stop challenging it. So along those lines, what's the thing you can do? So what I tell people is stop the but, and it's a really little thing. Stop using the word but. So
mm,
thank you so much for having us over for dinner. That was delicious. Oh, thank you, but the chicken was. You just did.
mm-hmm.
Why'd you just say but? So I was coaching someone recently, and so to be fair, like this is in one of my Inc. articles. So I'm reusing the content, but it's a really good example. We're talking about she she got a job offer and I was like, that's fantastic. She's like, but there's something wrong with them. It's like, what do you mean? She's like, well, I don't understand why they were so eager to make me the offer. What's wrong with them? And what she's getting at is like, how could they it's funny, right? But she's not kidding. She's
Mm-hmm.
genuinely like, she called me because she's really concerned maybe she shouldn't accept it because there's got to be something wrong
That's
with
such
them.
a double bind. It's
Completely.
like she wants a job, but any job that would want her, there must be something wrong because they want her. She's
Yeah.
just that is like such a double bind, and people get into those kind of double binds in relationships when they're dating. They really like this guy, but this guy likes them, and there must be something wrong with him for liking me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and so, and the funny thing is like leading up to her going for that job and all that, a lot of our conversations were on how she's not worthy of even applying for a job.
Mm.
She's like, well, because she had been out of work for a little while, like a lot of people coming out of the economic downturn. Totally understandable. She worked in retail. She was a specialist in a particular area, and guess what? Retail apocalypse. Stuff happens, and companies downsize. It's not because she was bad. Her whole business was gone that she was an employee of. That's not her fault. And people understand these things. So, but it's pretty devastating. So she started to internalize the negativity of how bad she is and how unemployable she is. And so it was like, well, I don't have any skills. It's like, you don't have any skills? Are you intelligent? She's like, well, I don't know that that's relevant, or maybe I'm not intelligent the way they need me to be. I was like, well, that's for them to judge, but did you go to college? Yeah, I went to school. Was it a good school? Yeah, it was a good school. How were your grades? Well, I got like a 3.9 or something, but that doesn't matter because I was wait.
But
Just you went to a good school, you got good grades. Period. End of discussion. That's a thing. Let it be. Now, whether it's relevant to each particular context or not, everything is relevant only in the things it's relevant to. You didn't go to school for everything under the sun and get a 4.0. So guess what? At some point, you're going to run into a setting where your education in college or university or whatever you want to call it isn't relevant. Like it may not make you a good cook. It may not make you, skilled at getting stains out of clothes. It may not make you an excellent road cyclist. Like who cares? It just I asked you if you got good grades at a tough school and you said yes. End of discussion. Were you ever employable? Yeah, I had that, but that ended. It's like, no, but you got a job. Was it a tough job to get? Yeah, it's pretty selective. Like I remember before I went to business school, I wanted to be an Apple genius as a side job because I'm a tech junkie and I knew I'd just spend more money on the Apple stuff with the discount. But I wanted it, and like the Apple Store was a brand new thing. It was harder to get into Harvard Business School, which is not where I got into. I didn't get in there, so like it's harder to get in there than to get a job as an Apple genius. And I could tell myself every reason why it's just harder to get in there than anywhere else, and I already didn't get into Harvard, so how could I possibly get in? Well, okay, I still applied anyway because it's like, look, I don't have the job now, so am I actually any worse off by applying and not getting it? No. So I just like I diffused the gravity of how terrible I am. It's like, who cares? I don't have it anyway, so I might as well try. So
mm-hmm.
you can take the butt out of it, and you can stop sort of catastrophizing just how big of a deal it is. Like when I wrote this book, I jokingly, kind of not, with people like, what are you trying to achieve with it? I was like, if I could be on stage doing a TED talk, that would be amazing. If I could sit across from Oprah in the woods on that couch she brings out there for Super Soul Sunday, that would be amazing. Like, because it's whether I want to do those things or not, like that's a sign that my message has gotten out in such a way and it's been deemed so impactful that it's worthy of being in those two settings that is just sort of like a litmus test of success and being an inspiration to people. I've got 2 TED Talks booked. Now, Oprah hasn't called yet. I assume she's having cell reception problems or maybe her battery died. That's okay. We'll get there. Like as soon as she charges up her phone, I'm sure any minute now. But I got 2 TED Talks. Like that's a pretty big thing. And for someone who laughed at it, or like I don't care. I didn't have any TED Talks before, so what difference does it make if I apply for them? I have literally nothing to lose. I said the thing about Oprah.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean I'm not going to get it because I tried to go there? No, like I
Mm-hmm.
have nothing to lose, and I don't need to start talking myself out of it because, well, so few people get to do that, and you need to sell millions of books, and you need to, okay, well, I'm not talking on her couch right now, so am I any worse off for trying, whether I think I'm capable of it or not? So stop the butt in your self-judgment and in how you talk about these things that you want to go for, because everything's possible if you just. And I love when people are like, "Well, I could never do that." I'm like, "Yeah, not with that attitude, you can't."
Right.
Kind of like get a laugh out of them, but it's true. If you say you're never going to do that, guess what? I guarantee you, you will never do that. But if you don't try, like you have no shot.
Yeah.
So you
I
might as well try.
I have a similar experience with this podcast. I mean, 2 years ago, we launched March 1st of 2016, and I, had never done a podcast before. I mean, I think it was November, just the December before, so a few months before, my husband and I read a book about it. We kind of looked into it online. I mean, I've been listening to podcasts since
Sure.
with my first check I was hired by an international training company to be their sales manager. That's why I moved from Canada to the States. And with my very first check back in 2006, I bought an 80 gigabyte like color iPod, and it was just like, it was so funny because my desktop was 80 gigabytes of storage, and I was holding in my hand this iPod. I'm going, I have as much computer in my hand as I use at my desk.
Yeah,
Um,
progress.
and that was when I was introduced to podcasts. I started looking for all the cool free content on the iTunes store, and I found a podcast that I still listen to today. I mean, it's crazy how much podcasts have evolved. And I always thought it'd be fun to host a podcast, but I never knew what the subject would be on. And I'm a total geek too, so I'd be definitely doing like a something techie or something geeky if it wasn't health. But I love health, and I love marketing. I think those three subjects are kind of like up there for my favorite. But I've been totally a health nut for the last 7 years because I was able to reverse my type 2 diabetes and my chronic adrenal fatigue with natural medicine. Oh, and I ended my lifelong infertility, and so I have a 2-year-old now. And thank
Congratulations.
you. And so it got to this point where, because I've been working with people for the last 7 years, and I got my health back, and then I've been helping people get their health back with natural medicine. And it just sort of, I think it was my husband that came up with the idea, but we decided what we were gonna do is do a podcast. And I thought, there's all these, like, I could put so many hours of work into this, and no one could listen. Like, how am I gonna get it out there? And we just decided to, like, go for it. We, instead of letting all the little negative self-talk turn us against this idea, I did what you did. I said, I'm gonna have, and may have this list of, like, the most famous doctors and authors in the world. Um, and I'm like, I'm gonna have those people on my show. And I'm like, who? And this little voice goes, who the heck do you think you are? You have a nothing. You don't even have a podcast yet. How are you gonna get these people as guests, right? And then I had to go, okay, well, you know what? I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna prove you wrong. That little voice in my head, I'm gonna prove you wrong. And I just yesterday booked one of my people on my list, Dr. Mark Hyman, who,
Wow.
yeah, I
He's
know,
awesome.
I know, he's
Good
totally
for you.
awesome. And
Congratulations.
I've been on a high ever since last night because I'm like,
I hear you.
I did it. Like, you got the two TED Talks books, which I think are amazing. That's amazing. I'm totally gonna see you on the Oprah sofa. Just don't stand on it. I don't know if you
No,
remember that
yeah,
incident.
I'm not going to do that. No one stood on the one in the woods yet,
Okay,
so
good.
I'm not going to be the
Yeah,
first.
don't be the first. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's exactly it, because I think every listener has that goal in their mind, like to write a book, to run a marathon, to live in a tiny home, to travel the world, like whatever that goal is that totally terrifies them and excites them.
Yeah.
And I want every listener to be able to accomplish that. So I have a listener who is just transitioning from being in a wheelchair to being able to walk again, and we've been writing
Wow.
back and forth, and she wants me to do some episodes on the handicap, the people who, how can they be healthy if they can't exercise because they, like, are in a
Mm.
wheelchair or immobile. And she said, I'll never feel the wind in my hair as I ride a bicycle again, but she's gonna try. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that is her goal. That is the goal. That's the TED Talk for you, is like being able to ride a bike again and have wind feel like flow through her hair as she, you know, glides
Yeah. It
down the
goes right.
road in her bicycle, is that's her big, thing. But, like, and then the little voice in her head wants to say, who do you think you are? You can't do that. You can hardly walk. You're just rehabbing out of a wheelchair, right? And that little voice just wants to, like, tear her down. And how do we mute that voice, and so that we stop, like, giving it power?
Yeah. Well, So, we talked about at a tactical level, stop the butt, and that takes time and it's really uncomfortable for, like you're saying, your husband's like, just hold the comment, like don't let it out. There's someone in my family who, whenever they give a gift before you've even opened it, they've spoiled what it is and said why you won't like it. You're gonna hate this sweater. It's like, okay, wait. Like, so my father has a way of, he would call, like, my brother always slept in. He would call my brother early in the morning on the weekend and he'd start with, "Oh, you're awake." It's like, wait, if you're surprised that I'm awake, why did you call me? It's like, if you bought me a sweater that you're insisting I'm gonna hate, why did you get it for me? And the thing is, she'd always be wrong. But it was like, you open it with this, like, oh, like, it just spoils the positivity of it. Can you just hold your tongue for a minute and let me look at it
That's
first and
so
go,
British. Is your mom British? Like that's so
no,
like that
it's not my
Canadian,
mother.
that
I'm not gonna say who
British.
it is, but it's not
Okay,
my mom.
well
Yeah. No, not.
it's so self-deprecating. That's kind of like the British humor. It's kind of like
Yeah.
that oh, I didn't get you a good gift, or that kind of put down. I
Yeah.
don't know. It's funny. I grew up with that too in Canada.
I could see that, like, yeah, I mean, Canadian culture following from the British culture a bit more. There's something that someone I'm coaching challenged me on this, and he said, "Well, it's humility. Brian, I'm not being egotistical. This is a good thing." I was like, "Hang on a second. You're doing this with every single compliment. That's not humility." And you can't use humility as the excuse for doing it 24/7. There are certain social situations, absolutely. Humility is a good thing to display from time to time, but you're doing it always. And you're doing it with this umbrella of humility to protect you. That's not what it
Mm.
is. When there's no one around, that's not humility. Those conversations with yourself about what you can't do, who's the humility for? What's the social setting that you're, being polite in? So he's like, "Yeah, you're right." I'm like, "You're using that as a crutch to get away with putting yourself down and disallow yourself to succeed." But I just said, "But look at me." Uh, Also, I want to set that aside for a minute because that's like the baseline for me is I talk about building a house and that's how you're going to get past this. So this self-love is the ground on which we're going to build your home. I hit on motivation, real, true, enduring motivation that comes from within you at such a deep level, you can't escape it. And I have questions I pose in the book. So I've got a chapter on motivation, and there's like 4 questions that are pretty crucial. If I boil it down to one, it's no matter what else is happening in your life, what will you always care about? And what I say to people is whatever your answer is, it's wrong. And I'm sorry for being negative, but you haven't gotten to the core of the issue yet. Your first answer, you're just at the surface. You need to ask yourself why. So when I was coaching someone who had lost his job and he's desperate to find his next job, he's like, I have to work. And I said, okay, why? He's like, because I'm the breadwinner. I pay the bills. And I'm like, okay, well, you just told me your wife works full time. You got this amazing severance package and you save like crazy and your kids moved out. So your bills are actually, your house is paid off. So your bills are well managed. So why is it about paying the bills? Well, and we did this back and forth. Why? And unfortunately, like, this isn't a great sales line for me as a coach, but that's kind of what coaches do, or a good coach. Like, you're just paying them to annoy you by just asking why over and over again. But so what we started with, I have to pay the bills, to this is a guy who is an ultra successful sales role that he got into coming straight out of college. He had been an NCAA athlete, blonde hair, blue eyes, gorgeous guy. Like, every woman was after him. Every guy wanted to be him. Super successful in sales. He had this 35-year career, and then he gets pushed out. His entire existence had been this outward portrayal of success, and that's how he felt his family looked at him. So his whole sense of identity was around that view of I'm a success, business wise. And he started that when he was like 22, and he's now in his 50s. And so he'd never paused to actually ask, like, wait, how did I get here? What do I care about? Why am I doing what I'm doing? So it just became this success related, like, corporate success related persona. And that was gone. And so what we got to is actually his sense of self
Mhm.
wasn't there. And so he was so uncomfortable with who he was because he didn't even know himself. Not only was he not blonde anymore, his hair was a slightly lighter shade, maybe white. He still had the blue eyes, but he's now diabetic. He, 22, like now he's a father of two who are in their 20s, who don't live at home anymore. They're self-sufficient. He's married now. Like everything in his life is completely different. He's nowhere near the same person that he was when he started this journey. And, it's like you kind of need to stop and get down. So it was all about the sense of self. So we had to get down to that deep level. That's the foundation of the building. And then what you're building on top of that is your goals. And we talked about, big goals and you set a structure to them and they need to be specific, not just be healthy. Well, what does that mean? What's the measurement of healthy and when are you going to achieve health by? When are you done being healthy and how do you endure with that? It's not just like, okay, I got healthy and now I can go back to living like, junk. So I would say like, it's not about beach season or losing weight for your high school reunion because what happens when that's done? You just go back to your old ways and you put the weight back on. You need to find a way to endure with whatever your goal is, financial success, relationships, weight, whatever. But then what we haven't answered is like, so you built this building on solid ground, this self-love based solid ground. How do you actually do it? Like it's not easy to do the things we just talked about, but once you get them done, like that's not good enough. You still have to take action. And that is actually the heart of the message of my book. It's what the title of my book is about. And this is how I live my life and how I help others to live theirs in my coaching work. And that's what I call Do a Day. That's the title of the book. And there's two key words in there. There's do and day. So the first, I'll start with the second word. I guess the third word in the title is day. That was really confusing, but start at the end. So start with the word day. I don't necessarily mean a particular day. What I mean is right here and right now, because that's actually all we ever have. And this goes right back to that self-love point is, we spend a lot of our time judging whether it's ourselves or what we've experienced, but we judge the past. And that can be negative or positive. So either we sit here beating ourselves up for a mistake we made. Why did I eat all that stuff? Why did I yell at my kid? Why did I screw up at work? Why did I cheat on my spouse? Why did I, like spend the money on whatever? Why did I leave my phone there and now I have to go buy a new, like whatever it is, big or small, we beat ourselves up for it. Or we beat other people up for what they did to us. And we blame the world outside, but why did she yell at me? Why doesn't he love me? Why doesn't my wife appreciate what I just did for her? Why is she mad at me? I was just trying to help. Why did they hit me? Why was that guy driving drunk? Whatever it is, we live in this judgment of the past kind of moment. And as if that wasn't enough, and this goes back to my feelings, my childhood anxiety around, what's going to hit me that I'm going to have to fix. We live in fear of the future. And actually, I didn't talk about the positive from the past. We can be longing for something that's gone. Whether it's a past relationship or better times or health, or, if you were in a serious accident, longing for the days before that. I remember, my back injury that led to the surgery, we moved and I was too cheap to get movers to move everything. So I moved a lot of stuff myself, and that ended up tweaking my back, and that led me to just excruciating pain. And so it's like, why did I do that? I longed for the days before that happened. And we do it with the future too. So it's, this fear of what's going to happen if, things go wrong. Is my wife going to die? And is my son going to grow up without his mother? And that is unbelievably impactful. I thought, the divorce situation did a lot to me. Losing a parent at age 2, that's pretty damn impactful. And then it's like, well, what's going to happen to me as his father? Like, how am I going to get him through that? Am I up for the task of how do I try to keep him as normal and well-adjusted as possible? And am I going to fail him? And is it only going to get worse? It's like you just start piling on all these what ifs of things that may or may not happen. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And we do it with positive things too. I use the story of when I first met my wife. I'm talking about her a lot in this show. She's pretty amazing, so that's all right. So I met her when I was in business school. She worked there. I remember like the first moment I saw her, people who know me, and if you're not picking up on this from how much I'm talking, I'm generally not the quiet type. So I remember the first moment I saw her, I was in the middle of a sentence and I just went dead silent. My lips didn't know how to move anymore. My brain couldn't process anything. I was just like, caught in this moment staring. I was like, that is everything. That's exactly what I'm all, and it wasn't just, she's beautiful, but it wasn't just that. It was like, I saw something in this woman that wasn't just about her looks. I saw some energy to her. So it's like I said, the zest for life. I saw this in her, and it just hit me. And somehow I was able to meet her and get to know her and talk. I think I mumbled some incoherent nonsense, and she was like, her first words to me were, "What?" Which is great. Great. Like I like worked up the nerve to finally go up and talk to her, and I had something worked out in my head, and I just bungled the whole thing. Somehow it all worked out. That's a great example. Like, oh, the future fell apart. Now she'll never go out with me. Like, look, we're married and we have a kid. You don't know what's going to happen. But those first 2 weeks after we had first met, I was so just like, I was so focused on all of the way, like, when are we going to go out, and thinking about like our first date, and when might I run into her, and what I'm going to say, and how great will that be. And I have no recollection of 2 weeks of my life, and I mean that honestly. Like, that's not just a catchy thing to say in the book. I genuinely have no clue what happened in those 2 weeks. I know I ended up failing an exam on like accounting or something, because yeah, it was accounting. um, because I was just brain dead for those 2 weeks. I was so consumed with all these future potential encounters with her, and actually that included having random encounters with her where I had no clue what to say because, like, my brain didn't work. So it's like, even being so caught up in the future potentialities, I missed out on the current thing, which was exactly the kind of thing I was hoping might happen in the future. It's like I blew the opportunity that was right in front of me because I was thinking about the future version of it. So we live our lives so caught between this judgment of yesterday and the fear and anticipation, good or bad, of tomorrow. And the reality is, we never have any of that stuff. We only have what's happening right now. And that's the idea of the day. It's this day right here, right now. And so then we get back to the first word. So if all you have is right now, you better do, like, proactive verb here. Do what you have to do in pursuit of your goals. Those things, that house that you built on the foundation, on that solid ground. You need to take action every single day in pursuit of your goals. And that's a proactive, purposeful thing. It's not a one day at a time. A lot of people are like, oh, one day at a time, it's the same thing. No, one day at a time to me is like, look, things are tough. You just have to get through it. Don't worry about tomorrow. Just get through today. I'm not talking about getting through anything. I'm talking about doing what you have to do to get through. It's not just grit your teeth, close your eyes, and the storm will pass. Is get your raincoat on and go get what you need to do done. Get yourself through it. You don't achieve by just waiting for the storm to end. So it is a much more purposeful approach. And that is what I found, is when you have that motivation underlying you and you feel this purpose of action, you get things done. And so, I said my goal was 185 pounds by the end of the year. I didn't get there. I got there by my birthday in October. So I got there early, and I ended up getting down to 180 by the end of the year. And that was, December 2011. I'm still 180 today, and here we are in 2018. And I haven't always been 180. Sometimes I've been 183, and sometimes I've been 177, and whatever. I've fluctuated around 180, but I've generally been within a couple of pounds of 180 for 6 years. I've never done that in my life, stayed that close to a weight. And it's because I've defined myself as a healthy person who knows exactly what I need to do to maintain my health and wellness. And so there's no question about that. I don't even really try. It's just who I am, because, I went at it with purpose and direction. I took specific actions. I changed the person that I am underlying all that, the reasons why I had been unhealthy in the first place. And now, because of self-love, I don't see myself as incapable of maintaining my health. I'm just a healthy person.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I was talking to someone who used to be a smoker, and he had tried and failed to quit numerous times. He did the gum and the patch and this and that and the hypnotist and whatever. And one day he literally just stopped smoking. And I was like, what was the difference? He said, I stopped saying I was someone trying to quit smoking. I just said I'm a non-smoker. And I was like, well, that's too simple, but I get it now.
Mm-hmm.
That I, I, I'm a healthy person. I'm not a guy. I used to say I spent the first half of my life obese and the second half trying not to be. I'm not someone trying not to be obese. Like, how unattractive does that sound or unappealing? I'm just a healthy person. End of discussion.
Mm-hmm. What's the difference
That
between
frames
being
people.
away from and being towards, like away from motivated versus towards motivated? So like
Yeah,
carrot and the stick, right? When we're away from motivated, so when we're motivating ourselves with negativity, so I don't want to be obese, I don't want to be obese, I'm trying not to be obese, we've got this very short term energy burst to keep us away from it, like the stick. But when we're kind of far away from that, so it's like the farther you get away from obesity, the less motivation you have to stay on track,
yeah,
because what was motivating you is far, far, far away from you now. So like
yeah. The
if
pressure's
the
off.
pressure's off, so then like you don't have to worry about it, right? And then that just has people yo-yo. But if
Yeah,
you make your, and it's, sometimes some people need a bit of that carrot just to get them started. But the best thing is that sorry, need the stick to get them started, but the
right.
best thing is the carrot. Like maybe have 90% carrot, 10% stick, because being away from motivated will have us burn out very quickly and yo-yo. And that happens with financial goals, with fitness goals, with everything. It'll have us go back to our old ways, because that we need to be close to that crisis to get us to get off rock bottom, basically, if we're
Yeah,
away from motivated. So if we turn that switch in our head to be more excited, more motivated by the carrot, by the reward, by what's in front of us, like you said, so you switched your language to define you as a healthy person. I'd love every listener right now just to try that on. I am a healthy person.
yeah.
And just
Now let
every
me.
day wake up saying I am a healthy person. Just because you have all these things you're working on, great, you're working on it, but your identity is I am a healthy person, and then you align your choices and your actions, your daily actions, in alignment with something a healthy person would do.
Ashley, let me ask something right now for anyone who just did exactly that in this moment, and this is a stop the butt moment. How many of you, if you said that out loud, looked left and looked right like, oh God, someone heard me and they're going to know I'm lying or they're going to know it's not true? So I was about to say, I'm a runner. And the first time I said that, I was alone on the phone. I was in my basement. I was alone, and I was talking to a friend who was asking me about what do I do for exercise. I was like, oh, I'm a runner. And I literally looked left and right, like, did someone just see me say that? Oh God, they're gonna know. Like, I got caught for lying. No, like, well, what do you do? I run. Okay, well, someone who runs is called a runner. I didn't say I'm an, like a world class, like, a sub 2.5 hour marathoner. I just said I'm a runner. Why am I fighting that idea? It's like, just if you say you're a healthy person, you want to frame yourself that way. Does it feel uncomfortable? Do you feel like you're lying or cheating? Just allow for it. And once you allow for it, then it soaks in. And then it's going to change your behavior because you've seen yourself as successful in the context you're seeking.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really powerful.
I love it. I love what you do with your clients. You're saying I just ask them why, I just annoy them a lot. But really, like the questions that you're proposing has them elicit their values, and oftentimes most people are unconscious of their values. And our
Yeah.
our values are part of our unconscious filter system. It's part of our, and they shift over time. Like it's really funny is because I'm a trainer and master practitioner in neuro linguistic programming, and part of our exercises that we do with clients is we elicit their values, and you do just that. You do that by saying, what is so interesting to you about this, or what motivates you around this, and start getting deeper by asking why. You're going to elicit their values. When we elicit values of men, most men after the age of about 18, their number one value is sex. And
Hmm.
I remember like just kind of giggling and laughing when I learned about this. I studied all this when I was in my 20s, and the trainer at the time that I was taking my trainings with said, no, most men, because I was doing this exercise, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I've got the weirdo pervert in the room. And and no, most men, their number one value is sex. And and then things like money and love and health kind of all come second and third. But over time they shift. And sometimes when we have a lot of negative beliefs like about ourselves around health, for example, that value will go lower and lower and lower, meaning it's less and less of our motivation. But as
Mm,
we clean up stuff around it and start to self like positive identify around it, like you identified yourself as being healthy, then that value is allowed to rise and become more and more important to you, and thus becomes your unconscious motivator. And so it's this like crazy head game that you can play to clean up your own stuff, but ultimately, like what you just said, by you identifying as healthy, that is allowing you to sort of move the Jenga blocks in your head so that you are now more motivated by doing health things. And your behavior is a direct result of the belief system you have inside. So what you're doing with what you teach in your book, you are helping people to shift their belief system so they shift their behaviors and shift their habits, and their behaviors and habits are what's going to help them accomplish their goals.
yeah, no, spot on. And luckily, they don't end up annoyed with me generally. They get okay with it. But it's like you get the first bit of a little bit of like, oh, but I just answered you. And then after we go through the next level, they're like, oh, you're totally right. Or it's not me, they're total. I didn't say it. I just said why. They're totally right because they're like they stumble upon the next level. And it might take, there's I used to be a COO, and there's a, like in lean, which is like an operational efficiency approach. There's this tool you use called the 5 whys. So whatever problem you're solving, you get your first answer of what's wrong, and you ask, why. You keep asking why at least 5 times. It could take 20 times. There's no magic answer of how many times you need to dig in. It's just about when do you get to that deeper level. I mean, look, I'm guilty of this too. Even when I wrote the book, I talked about my motivation. It's so tied to my son, and it was doing a podcast interview where the guy stopped me and he's like, I got to call BS. He's like, you're talking about something internal to you, and I know, like, I'm a father too, and our kids are very much in, so tied to our inner feelings and everything, but he's still external. So you're not even following your own advice. It's like, yeah, you're 100% spot on. And here I am 6 years later in a bestseller, and I'm still on that journey. And that's okay. Like, my
Mm-hmm.
son's still awesome. He's a huge part of it. Like, he's the coolest little guy. But there is more to it than that. And I wasn't in touch with it yet. Like, I wasn't fully understanding why why my feelings about my son actually are a reflection about me. And it was
Yes.
someone else who was like, did you see yourself and what happened in the divorce when you were looking at him and him looking at losing his mother? And it didn't strike me at that moment, but it certainly did when we talked about it. And as I reflected, that's what helped me pull out more of like, where do I fall in this? And self-love is important, because if this is about how I feel about myself and the life I actually deserve to live, if I don't value myself, then I don't deserve to live any life. So I'm never going to find my real, true underlying motivation if I can't allow for myself to be deserving of not just being that guy who works there. Like, my wife and son are the family, and I'm that guy who works there. Like, ugh, you know, so unappealing.
What I love about what you just shared, by the way, it's very vulnerable for you to share this, but and I love what you're sharing because what the message that you're teaching is that you don't need to be perfect to start. You didn't wait to start. You didn't wait to write your book until you had become some massive guru, had completely cleaned up everything and become 100% self-aware and like ascended master. Like you didn't
Mm,
wait to like this unattainable level of personal growth before you wrote your book. You still can help people, and you're still not perfect. Like that Joshua
yeah.
Rosenthal, the creator of the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, he talks about how he's like thank God I didn't wait to do the kind of counseling and coaching that I do. He said he'd do health coaching all day long. He was like a licensed counselor, and he'd
Hmm.
do this kind of he did like mental health stuff, but he realized that by helping people clean up their diet, they ended up like healing their emotions a lot quicker, because
Oh, of
there's like,
course, yeah.
you clean up your body, that's where your emotions live, right? If you're eating, McDonald's, like how you don't have a clean conduit to like clean up your emotional
No, your
stuff.
hormones are all screwed up, and that's going to
Yeah.
impact your emotions. And yeah,
Exactly, exactly. So he started doing health coaching, and he would then he'd finish his day of health coaching, go into his car, drive to the store, buy a pint of ice cream, and smoke cigarettes while eating his ice cream. And it's just
uh,
like, and this is his big, deep, dark secret. Like, what kind of health coach am I? I'm eating ice cream and smoking cigarettes. But it was something he had to work out his own stuff. And he,
yeah.
he says now, like, thank God that I didn't wait till I had figured out how to quit smoking and figure out how to clean up my diet 100% before I started working with clients, because he ended up creating this giant institution that is like
It's huge.
the
Yeah.
leading institution in health coaching, and he teaches the health coaches, like, don't wait till you're perfect to be a health coach. I did not wait till I was perfect to start this. I'm overweight, and I'm a host of a health podcast. I had to like look in the mirror and go, you know what? I'm working on my own stuff, but I'm not going to wait to be perfect before I start this podcast. And I had to have that conversation with myself. And I know a lot of people say, I can't do that because I'm not, X yet. Like, I can't write a book because I don't have a degree, or I can't, travel because I don't have enough money, or whatever, like whatever excuses. And then they say,
Yeah.
the excuse, and they let the excuse be this giant wall that is
Hmm.
like so real it stops them. It's like, no, you know what? You don't have to be perfect. Your life doesn't have to be perfect in order for you to have what you want. You just have to commit to having it. If you can't even walk up a flight of stairs because you get winded walking up a flight of stairs, declare yourself a marathon runner and work towards it. But you're not gonna become a marathon runner if you never work towards it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and I know you've run some marathons. Can you share your experience about that?
I've run a marathon, which
Okay,
I will,
one.
I will not, well, I won't call it my only one. It was my first, and I'm very careful to define it that way because I fully intend to run another. Um, I'm recovering from knee surgery, so it's probably not going to be this year, but I will definitely run another. And you know what? It really didn't go well. The training was the most amazing time of my life up to that point, and it was beautiful. And I spent a ton of time in my thoughts, and I would go out early in the morning before the world was awake, and I loved it. So that was unbelievable, and the training went really well, even with ups and downs and some tough moments, but some injury and whatnot. But I worked through all that, and I grew tremendously through the training. The actual marathon was a beautiful day. It was in Chicago. It was a huge crowd. I mean, it's like everything was perfect, except I caught some kind of bug, which I didn't realize, but I had a stomach bug. I was nauseous the day before, and I'm like, this is jitters. Like, of course,
Oh.
And I was on the road, and like I don't usually sleep well in hotels, and I actually had to change hotels. I was at one hotel 2 nights before and another one the night before, and so like a new bed each time. I literally did. I slept an hour 2 nights before, and I
Oh.
didn't sleep at all the night before. And I felt miserable anyway, but I just kept saying, it's nerves and whatever. But I got up, I went to, I basically meditated the entire night, just being like, maybe I'll fall asleep meditating, or like, if I can't sleep, at least I'll be rested and collected as best as possible. I'm not going to sit here and be anxiety ridden. So that was good. I wasn't asleep, but at least I wasn't spinning, which is really important, because do a day, right? It's only right now. I'm not running the marathon at the moment. So I got up, the charge and the energy. I was running for St. Jude's Children's Hospital, which is just an amazing organization, and I firmly believe in their mission. And so I had a lot of responsibility in that, and also a lot of just love for the reason why I was doing it. And so I wanted to do it because of that. So I got out there. First part of marathon actually went okay, the first like 5-6 miles, but I'm well aware that I generally need about 5K, and then I fit into this feeling of I could go forever. And after 20 miles, that might fade, but I get into this zone where like I'm fully warmed up, and I'm in it. And 5K came and went, and that didn't happen. And
Oh.
4 miles came and went, and that didn't happen. And 6 miles, and I had these energy chews with me that they were like this organic. I'm vegan, so they're vegan, they're organic. Like, it's all good ingredients. I had those with me, and I had used them all through my training, so I knew how I wanted to parse them out. Now it's mile 6, and I'm halfway through them, and I'm not feeling anything. I'm like, all right, this is an issue. I'm going to go to the half mile, to the half marathon, and the crew from St. Jude is just up ahead after that. So, let me get to the halfway point, and then I'll go a little bit further, and I'll see them, and that'll probably give me a lift because I always hear when you go through the charity section, all the charity groups are there, and they're cheering their people on, and I'm wearing their jersey, so that's going to give me a boost because there's definitely a boost to that, like getting cheered on. I made it to the halfway mark. I was close to the pace I wanted. I was slightly behind, but I anticipated being slightly behind in the first half because I didn't want to burn up all my energy. So, I'm sort of on the plan still. I was gunning for a sub 4 hour marathon, which I should have been able to do pretty cleanly. I should get in at like 3:40 to 3:45. I get to St. Jude. They're cheering me on. My name's on my bibs. They're like, go, Bryan. I'm putting my fists in the air and I'm dancing around and I'm feeling terrible inside, but still go. And I get to mile 15. I'm like, all right, I'm out of energy chews. I'm out of energy. I haven't had Gatorade since 2005. I haven't had anything remotely like it since then. Like I don't drink soda anymore. I haven't had those kinds of dyes and sugars and chemicals and all that. But I need something. I really need something to try to get my energy up. So biggest mistake of the race, I took a cup of Gatorade and then I took a second one. I'm like, all right, hopefully that's going to help me. This was at the aid station. So I go another mile and I could have the miles off because I think I was counting wrong. So maybe that was mile 15 and not 14 or 16, whatever, but it's somewhere around between like 14 and 16. I think it might've been 16. So then between that mile and the next one, I get hit with the absolute sharpest stomach pain I'd felt since second grade when I got salmonella, or third grade when I got salmonella. I had salmonella twice. It's one of the downsides of being the fat kid and you eat everything is
Oh
like
my gosh.
you get food poisoning a bunch.
Oh.
So I just had terrible pain and I literally stopped dead in my tracks. And I was like, this is a real issue. Walk a little bit, see what you can do. So like I got myself moving again. I was walking. I was really thirsty, so I got a cup of water. My stomach hurt a lot, but it wasn't that like knife in you kind of sharp pain. But I got myself moving. I'm like, all right, there's a medical tent at the next mile marker. You need to get yourself there and see if maybe you need to go into the tent. And as I got myself there and I looked at the tent and the pain was subsiding a bit. So I was like, all right, maybe it's just the Gatorade and I need to work through this. So I'm gonna jog a little bit. And so I got myself moving again and I maybe went 200 feet and I'm like, this is too much. I need to walk again. So I basically did this not quite run, but call it run walk or jog walk for the next few miles. And I was really, really hurting. It was bad. And you get into this place where you're not sure if like you want to listen to your body, but you're not sure if your body always knows what you can do or not. And you're not sure if maybe you're psyching yourself out. Maybe you just need to push through it. Maybe it'll pass. Maybe you're being really foolish and your life is in jeopardy. And there are people who die in races. It happens, or people who pass out and they have very serious medical complications. So I start going through all that. It's like, okay, I need to evaluate, body part by body part, where do I stand? Do I need to head into the tent or not? Because there's a tent, almost every mile. Maybe it spreads out to 2 miles. But so while I'm walking, I happen upon this guy who's also walking. And we just start talking. He's really inspirational and like, what a great guy. We just kind of hit it off. And then he tells me he's a preacher. And like, I'm not Christian, but it didn't surprise me that I was being inspired by this guy because that's kind of his life commitment is to bring people up and inspire them. And it also helped that he was also struggling. So, we had that camaraderie. But we basically were back and forth, either walking together or one of us would get running again and then the other one would catch up just when the first one had started walking. And so we were, patting each other on the back, getting ourselves through it. And that got me through quite a bit. And I was able to start running again for the last couple of miles. And the last, I think, kilometer or so, or maybe a little less than that, maybe it was 800 meters, I really put in my full effort and I felt okay again. And I pushed myself really hard and I finished really strong. I came in at 4 hours and 44 minutes and 28 seconds. So about an hour later than I thought I would be. than I wanted to be. And I was really heartbroken by that. And I had a serious struggle for a while with it, because I put in 5 months into the training. And, that's a huge commitment. And I had my current job offer, and I had delayed starting my job because of the race. I wanted to get through the race and give myself a week to make sure I could walk again before starting. I was like, I put aspects of my life on hold for this, and look what happened. I didn't get to my goal. I feel miserable. I was pretty depressed, and that's where I was like, hey man, do a day. This happened. Let's put this in perspective. You still finished the marathon. You still finished the marathon faster than most of your friends who have ever run marathons. Most people that I'm friends with have run over 5 hours. So I'm like, even though this went horribly by your account, if you told that to someone who finished in 5.5 or 6 hours, how do you think they'd feel about it? Is it really as bad as you think it is? Are you beating yourself up too much? Let's look at what happened. It turns out I actually was sick, and I found that out afterwards. I'm like, okay, you're so tough on yourself, but there's extenuating circumstances. And actually, it's funny looking back on it now. As I tell that story, I don't feel any of that pain, because my memory of it actually is really positive. Because I'm left with the achievement. But it took me that, I had those tough moments, and it's like we said before, like I'm not perfect. I go through this stuff myself. I had to go through reevaluating, being introspective, and reminding myself, do a day. I ended up blogging about it. I wrote a blog post on my flight back from Chicago, and that helped a lot. It was very cathartic. I did another one about a week later where I processed more of the feelings, and then I was pretty okay with it. And now I get to a place where I'm good because, hey, if nothing else, I can still set a record for myself next time. Like first race, it doesn't matter how long it takes you, 12 hours, it's still a record, right? It's the fastest you've ever run. It's the long, like I'd never run that distance before. You don't go the full distance in training. So I realized like I still achieved quite a bit. And I've also left room for future greatness, and that's got to feel pretty good. So I'm certain I will run another marathon. And I'm certain at some point I will run a marathon faster than the one I did for my first marathon. And that's not so bad,
I
you
love
know?
what you shared about the 5 months of training, because you said how beautiful it was. You're a morning person. You'd get up in the morning. It was very peaceful. It was time to be with yourself and in your thoughts. And you took us there in that moment. And I could just imagine, like waking up and smelling the early morning dew and feeling the early morning rays of sunlight, and feel the energy sometimes running through mist as the fog clears, just really beautiful, and
It
this,
was incredible.
yeah, this
Yeah.
wonderful, inspiring time that you had with yourself, and it set up the rest of your day to be very successful. And you had 5 months of that. And what we do a lot of times is we just negate the journey and get
Yeah.
so wrapped up in the destination. A lot of people, even if you had been successful, like whether or not you achieved your level of success, like some people, they win a gold medal at the Olympics, and then they're like totally fall into depression.
Yes.
Because it's like,
Yeah.
well, okay, so when you achieve your goal, like you didn't achieve, in your mind, you didn't achieve your goal. You did because you were very self-critical. You it didn't go the way you want it to go. And by the way, unfulfilled expectations lead to upset. You had set up a lot of
Yes.
expectations. You had 5 months of setting up expectations, and it didn't go the way you expected it to, and therefore you're upset about it and you're beating yourself up. And then, it took you time to process it and go, hey, wait a second. And by the way, I love that you're human. You know what I mean? A lot of personal growth authors can come across as being, like demigods, right? That they somehow are immune to these things. And I love that you shared that it sucked, that the marathon sucked, and that it was painful, and you had to process your crap. And that's
Yeah.
great, because we all have to process our crap. But there's two things that happen when we set a goal. We either don't, we work really hard to get there, and either we don't get the goal, so we don't, climb the mountain, or we don't, get to do that road trip, or something happens and it doesn't go the way we wanted it to, right? Or we didn't
Yeah.
get the raise, we didn't, win first place, whatever. And then we're left, kind of beating ourselves up and feeling bad about it, and we have to kind of recoup and learn from, and then go, you know what? I'm going to do this and this next time, and that becomes the learnings that we use to build upon ourselves, right, as future success. So now you I bet you have like 100 things that you are going to do differently next time because you learned from the first time, and that's much better than having, if it had gone totally smooth and you're like, yeah, that was kind of okay, that was fine, you would have not learned anything. So
Yeah.
like you gain so much more because it was a quote unquote failure.
Yeah.
And that now you have, and I love that you can then look and go, hey, wait a second. I did run a pretty good time. Like for the fact that I felt crappy and I drank Gatorade and I, walked and jogged some of it. I and didn't sleep for 2 days. I had a pretty good time. So it's funny how we can kind of make it out to be like it was the complete failure, and then when you
Yeah.
start to look at it logically without all the emotion, you go, wait a second, actually that was a pretty good success. But I think we have
Yeah.
to do that with ourselves. We have to go, okay, wait, what were my unfulfilled expectations that I set up? And what can I learn from this? What can I learn from this to apply to the future? But then there comes a time, like I had mentioned, where someone accomplishes their goal. Like let's say you spent 5 months planning to run a marathon, you run the marathon, it was a complete success, and then a lot of people then kind of sit back after the celebration wears off, and they feel kind of depressed and
Yeah. You're empty
down
now.
and empty because they haven't put the next goal in their future to move forward towards, and so they're left kind of questioning their life. Isn't that, aren't we just so weird and funny? It reminds me of Winston Churchill's, one of my favorite people from the past. He says success consists of going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Yeah. It is. It's really interesting when you're like, I'm sure I learned 100 things to do differently next time. There's the only thing I'd do differently in the actual marathon, like logistically or action wise, is I just wouldn't have had the Gatorade. I would have been a little bit more prepared, for the potentiality that I needed another form of energy, and I would have brought something myself that I know I do well with. Like there's a couple of cardinal rules, like first time marathoner mess ups, and one is you go out too fast, and I didn't do that. The other is you abandon your nutrition plan. I did that, and I have my reasons for it, so I'm not beating myself up over it. But I'd just be better prepared. But actually, the things I'd do differently have nothing to do with running or any of that. In the training and in the marathon, what I would do differently is I'd do a day. And I'm a very different person today because that was a couple of years ago now, almost 2.5 years ago. So I've been through a lot. Like the books come out, I've done these shows, I've understood it yet another level deeper on my motivation. So my training, the downfall in my training program, which I talk about in the book, is I pushed myself too hard despite a lot of signs that I need to actually cut back on one of the days, because I started to be like, well, if I don't do this, then I won't be, my training will fall off and I won't be at the point I'm supposed to be. And then the marathon will fall. Like I started to get too much anxiety about the future, and I didn't do a day. And so I made a bad decision. This happened twice in the training. I made a bad decision that ended up costing me a lot. I got really badly hurt doing a race I should not have done. And I knew damn well when I was on that starting line, I was like, I shouldn't be here. And I did it anyway. It was a trail race that I'd never done, and I was doing it with two friends who both backed out last minute. So there's no reason for me to do it anymore except that I don't back out of things. And that's all like that internal voice judging myself for being a quitter in the past or being judged as lazy or whatever. And I did the race and I fell really hard and I smacked up one half of my body. And I should have taken a bunch of time off. I took the one rest day off that I had the next day. And then I went right back out and ran Monday, and it hurt like hell. And I got really badly injured and I tore part of my calf. And it's like, you thought, not doing that race was somehow going to set you back, or not doing Monday's workout. I should have taken Monday and probably Tuesday and Wednesday off. But, that was going to ruin my training. And then again, like I wasn't doing a day, and I got
Mm-hmm.
really badly hurt and I had to take a week off. And I'm really blessed that I have an acupuncturist who, that's the reason my wife is still alive. He's the only one who's able to stop the spiral and give her space to find an actual solution. So I went to him like 4 times in the week, and I have a personal training certification, and I just haven't taken the test, but I've done all the work to be a corrective exercise specialist as well. So I had all the physical tools beyond the acupuncture to do the right thing. So I was I was doing everything I needed to do to speed my recovery, and it worked really well. And then when I got back into training, I was really careful. So I abandoned my plan basically for 2 weeks because I took a week off to give myself time to heal, and I did a lot of reparative things. And then when I
Mm-hmm.
got back into it, I was not pushing it as my plan prescribed. I cut way back. I was basically just trying to get the miles in with none of the sprinting or any of that. So my lack of focus on the thing I teach in my own moment of weakness is what almost cost me the whole race. And it was what cost me that initial feeling of success and even just like contentment that ultimately I have now, but I didn't have in the moment. And that's what I do differently. I would let go of all of this judgment, just as I talk about, but I'm a different person today, so I'm not worried about my ability to let go of it.
Yeah, it's like, who are we trying to impress? We need to ask ourselves, like, who am I trying to impress with this behavior when I know I shouldn't be doing it? I love that you emphasize a lesson of self care.
Yeah.
It's so smart. Like, we get so gung ho about a fitness plan, and so many people end up injuring themselves early on in their fitness plan, and then kind of beating themselves up, and then giving up completely, and then starting over the next year. When it's okay to start slow. It's okay to, like, just
Mm-hmm.
like do a 20-minute workout, do a 10-minute workout. It's the consistency and and also when you need a day off, take that day off. It's
Yeah.
that self-care and that awareness that you're not trying to be like Hulk Hogan tomorrow. You're not trying to like lift a car tomorrow. You're just want to build the body slowly every day, and that self-care is going to help avoid injury, and also take the stress off, because we go into stress response when we
Oh, yeah.
push ourselves too hard and judge ourselves too much. And it's I tried CrossFit, and ended up really pushing myself too hard and injuring myself, because I got kind of, it's very contagious, the CrossFit attitude of like,
Yes.
go, 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 you can do it, push,
Yeah.
push, push. And I was like, we were racing everyone, even though you're supposed to just like try to beat your own last time. I
Yeah,
was
but
trying
you
to
don't.
beat this other girl who,
Yeah.
I was like,
People get
I'm
caught up in it.
totally gonna beat this other girl. And I can get very competitive physically, and it's exciting to me to like get competitive and push myself. And but it's like, yeah, if I had been doing it for 6 months,
Yeah.
and I built up the endurance, but that was my first month into
Oh, man.
into doing it, so we've got to like balance self-care with the physical activities that we do. I think that's really important. I know everyone's on the edge of their seat wanting to know what happened to your wife. So before we wrap up the podcast interview, I'd love for you to share with us. So your wife was sick. You guys ended up finding an acupuncturist. Can you share briefly what happened?
So she has chronic Lyme disease, and she grew up in Long Island and then moved to Vermont at a young age, both heavy tick areas, and it was a pretty common occurrence to have ticks on her. It's just par for the course in that area. And so she got bitten as a little kid, and that is why she would have these flare ups.
Mm-hmm.
And no one could ever explain it. The problem with Lyme disease is the medical establishment sees it very distinctly as an acute thing that you get right away after getting bit.
Oh,
And you can only get it if the tick's been attached for 24 hours or more. And I'm like, do ticks have a watch? You think that they can tell time? Where did this come from? There's actually no evidence behind that, but it's all very like, this is exactly what it is, and there's no deviation, and there's no such thing as chronic Lyme. Actually, like one of the hospitals that we went to, they have a Lyme Center, and you go to the Lyme Center's website, it says right on the front page, there is no such thing as chronic Lyme. If that's what you believe you have, you cannot come here for treatment. It's like, oh, okay, thanks for your help. Now,
wow.
as we've come to learn, there's a huge chronic Lyme population. There's a
Mm-hmm.
huge need for support there. The CDC, the Center for Disease Control, have said, they came out, I think it was about 3, 4 years ago now, and admitted that they've been underreporting the incidence of Lyme.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's officially reported. So the number of people who are like her that are being told you're crazy, it's all your fault, you're this, you're that, there's nothing wrong with you. How many of those people have Lyme that aren't getting reported?
Absolutely.
And Lyme is incredibly hard to treat. If you catch it right away and you treat it really hard, you have a chance of getting rid of it. But if you don't, then it becomes this insidious, semi-dormant thing that will flare up and is really, really severe.
Mm-hmm.
And we know, we don't know them because they're dead now, but we know of people who have lost their battles with it. And that's a really scary thing. And one of the toughest things that we face, and my wife is the one living it, is when you have bad days and you have a confluence of symptoms that look like the symptoms that her downward spiral started with. It's very natural for your mind to go right back to, oh God, is this happening again?
Mm-hmm.
And you don't know. Now she's in a different place. She's much healthier than she was then. She has tools at her disposal. She's got all this knowledge. She's actually a health coach. She just took her final exam. She's about to get her certification because she's been like me. I never said how I got into coaching was people saw me from social media and then they started asking me for help. So like me, she went through something similar. So, she got very vocal about what she was going through and about Lyme, and people started to come out of the woodwork. It's like, I think that's what I've been facing, or I know that's what I've been facing, and no one's helping me. And so she was in these support communities. So people started to come to her for help. And it became a very natural thing. And through that, she's like, I need more information. And she's just like a sponge. She's constantly researching and looking into things. She's learned a ton. And she's like, I want to do this more formally. So she's been through a year-long program with the Functional Medicine Institute. So it's the FMCA, it's Functional Medicine Coaching Alliance or Association. I forget what the A is. I swear, like I went to one of the two most rigorous MBA programs in the world. I swear this was more rigorous than that. So she is unbelievably empowered and knowledgeable, and she's literally helping to save lives today, which is beautiful. And they're lives that are being told, there's nothing wrong with you. You're doing this to yourself. You have no hope. All the people who really just need someone to give them a bit of hope and guidance. And
Mm-hmm.
people who should be doing that aren't. Doctors are amazing. They also don't know everything. And, let me just remind any doctors listening who are saying, Lyme's not real or whatever. There was a point in time where the solution for everything was bloodletting and putting leeches on people.
Mm-hmm.
And the earth was flat and the sun revolved around us. And that's fine. The thing is, you're scientists, you learn by observing. When you're observing people who are going through this, who, by the way, test positive for Lyme in the Western blot test, maybe what you're being told by the powers that be in the medical community might just be in one of these bloodletting moments where we need to make a shift because we're seeing something different, and damn it, people need your help.
It's called an OPART. 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 In archaeology, when they find something and they carbon date it and it goes completely against the narrative of history, of written history, they will
Yeah.
omit it. Instead of changing the story, they will omit it. So that what they found years ago is they found a carved statue made of ivory, a carved ivory of an elephant when they unearthed an old, ancient ruin in
Hmm.
Mexico. And they carbon date it,
Wow.
and then they, because of the timeline, they're like, wait a second, no elephants were in this area, or woolly mammoths or
Hmm.
whatever. These animals weren't here at this time, and people with ivory shouldn't have been in this area. And so they, instead of like begin to question the narrative that they've
Hmm.
placed before us, that we've sort of either built along the way or accepted, they negate it. When they
Yeah.
find a they find human remains and it looks like like Lucy, or looks like one of the uh pre-humans, and then they carbon date it and it goes against, oh, we shouldn't have been evolved at this stage at this time, we shouldn't be located in this part of the world at this time or whatever.
Right.
They omit it because
Yeah.
it's an O part, and because it takes a lot to go against the grain.
Yeah.
And when it comes to health, it takes a lot to go against the grain. It takes a lot to shift the narrative. We're still suffering from what they said back in the 50s about health. Oh,
Oh yeah.
fat's bad, eat low fat food. Well, now we're eating a bunch of processed low fat food full of sugar, full of highly
Sugar.
refined sugar, highly refined flour since the 50s. and that's only made obesity, diabetes, and heart disease go completely skyrocketing. And so and it's very interesting how we will accept certain things like cholesterol medication. Cholesterol medication, how it works is it destroys the liver, so the liver ceases to function correctly, and ceases to produce cholesterol because the body needs cholesterol. And it's a complete this myth. It's a complete myth that the body that the we were like all of a sudden like high cholesterol causes heart disease. It's a total myth. It's now been
Yeah.
proven. It's now been proven. I've had cardiologists on my show who are awake who say like the doctor that wrote Wheat Belly, Dr.
Uh-huh.
William Davis. He says no one should be on, or maybe 1% of the people that are on cholesterol medication would actually benefit from it. But other like 99% of the people on cholesterol medication are being harmed, and it is doing them no good.
But
And
Ashley, there's no money in 1% of people taking those drugs.
exactly.
I want you to like, that's what matters. And for
Exactly.
anyone who thinks that like, oh, you're just being conspiracy theorist, I was a management consultant in one of the company that does the most pharmaceutical consulting out there. So guess what? It's real. There's no money in solving problems. There's money in treating chronic issues
Mhm.
that we just end up creating.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, that's a whole other episode we can go into, but I completely agree. I
Exactly,
completely
exactly.
agree.
I'm sure that if they could come up with a drug for chronic Lyme disease, they will admit that chronic Lyme disease
Yeah.
is a complete thing tomorrow. I've
Yeah.
actually had some experts on the show about Lyme disease. I'd love to hook you up with them
Great.
because it's yeah, absolutely. And hey, I'd love to have your wife on the show. She's if she's like a health coach and she has this wonderful background, I'd love to have her on the show as well. It has been a pleasure having you on the show. This time has flown by. I'd love to have you back. I think there's so much more that you can share with the listeners and help them to better their life. So, do a day is a process that you teach in your book that has people be in the moment while working towards their goals, not feeding any energy towards the negative thoughts and allowing them to actually enjoy their life in the moment while they're working towards the goals. Does that sum it up?
Yeah, like I wish I'd met you months ago. That's like the perfect. Yeah. Oh, that's perfect. And of course, I'd love to come back. I'm working on my second book, so we'll have more to talk about. And I'd love my wife to be on the show. I don't know what she'll say, but I would definitely going to call her after this and ask her because I think this is spot on. I mean, this is what she does, and I think you guys will click, and I think your audience will get a lot from her too.
Very cool. And I know so. She's able to heal herself from Lyme disease, and I love that an acupuncturist was the doctor that was able to help her to put the dots together because acupuncturists are just so amazing. It's been so wonderful, Brian, having you on the show. Listeners, if you'd like to check out Brian's blog and his website, he's got some really great information on his website. And if you'd like to maybe hire him as a coach or definitely get his book, please go to the show notes of the podcast for those links. Now your website is New Bodies. It's new like any W.
There's an easier one.
Oh, is it
So
easier? Okay.
yeah, so that's the code. Like no one gets it's .es. No one gets that. So
Yeah.
for the book, look, it's a book and it's called Do a Day. So go to doadaybook.com, and I link to New Bodies, and I'm building bryanfalchuk.com. But then you got to learn how to spell my name, and it's super weird. So
I
just
like
go
Do
to
a Day Book. Okay, so
doadaybook.com.
doadaybook.com. That's so much easier.
Yeah.
That's great.
And
Well,
I link everything there, like my ink articles. You can find where to buy the book. You can get to my blog, like the coaching, the speaking, really everything. It just, if you remember, the book's called Do a Day, and it's a book, doadaybook.com.
doadaybook.com. Well, the link to your book and your website is going to be in the show notes of the podcast. Brian, has there been anything left unsaid? Is there anything like you'd like to share with the listeners to wrap up today's show?
There's so much to this. I think if I could just the one thing I'll harp on for everyone, it's not the core of Do a Day, but it's like if you don't have this, then nothing else really matters. I just ask everyone, just allow for yourselves. Like as simple as that. It's, whether you want to call it stop the butt or whatever. Like we're all amazing people and we are born clean slates. We deserve and have the ability to have great lives. Just allow for that. You start from that place and suddenly everything becomes a possibility. And that's just unbelievably beautiful. So I hope that everyone can find a bit of allowance in themselves for themselves.
The Truth About Vaccines is a riveting new docuseries that exposes the truth behind vaccines. Do vaccinations confer immunity? Are there natural options to vaccinations? What questions should you ask before you vaccinate? Were vaccines responsible for the decline in polio, smallpox, and pertussis? What about the flu shot and the HPV vaccine? Are they safe? Why do outbreaks occur mostly in vaccinated populations? There's so many questions around vaccines, and we need to expose the truth. That's why I'm inviting you to watch the docuseries, and you can attend for free. Go to learntruehealth.com/vaccines. That's learntruehealth.com/vaccines to enroll to watch the free screening of the revolutionary docuseries, The Truth About Vaccines. There's over 60 scientists and expert doctors in boosting the immune system and in understanding vaccines and how they work. They're here to teach us for free what we can do naturally to boost the immune system and fully understand the impact that vaccines have on our lives, on our bodies, and on our children. We need to expose this information for the sake of ourselves and our future. Go to learntruehealth.com/vaccines and sign up now so that you can get free access, because knowledge is power. Watching this will help you and empower you and your family to make the best choices you can for your future. learntruehealth.com/vaccines.